What watches a children's playground after the sun goes down? In the manicured suburb of Whispering Pines, Fort Myers, that question had a terrifying new answer. It started with a flicker on a smartphone screen. A single grainy image posted to the neighborhood's social media group. The caption read, "Anyone know what this is? My doorbell camera caught it by the playground swings at 2 a.m. The image was a mess of blurry pixels, a low, dark shape against the pale sand. But it was big. Too big to be a raccoon, too sleek to be a black bear. Before we continue, let us know from which city you are. We are interested to know from where our videos are watched. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your rating. This gives us motivation to make new and interesting videos. So, let's get started. The post exploded. Within minutes, comments flooded in. Bobcat? Coyote on steroids. Then, the one word that silenced the speculation and ignited a new kind of fear. Panther. Mark Davis stabbed his finger at the screen, his face illuminated by the cold blue light. "See? I told you," he said to his wife, his voice tight with anxiety. "I told you this place was too close to the preserve." Mark was new here. He had moved his family from Chicago for the sun and the safety. He now saw a predator at the edge of his perfectly curated life. His two young children slept soundly in their beds, unaware of the shadow that had just fallen over their playground. He scrolled through the panicked comments, his jaw set. This was a threat, and he was the kind of man who eliminated threats. Across the street, 12-year-old Maya Vance looked at the same image on her own tablet. She zoomed in, her artist's eye searching for form and line where others saw only fear. Unlike Mark, she wasn't new. She had grown up with the sounds of the cypress swamp hissing and humming behind her house. She saw not a monster, but a mystery. Her mother, Sarah, a vet assistant, leaned over her shoulder. "It's too blurry to be sure of anything, honey," Sarah said, her voice a calm counterpoint to the digital hysteria. "People see what they want to see, or what they're afraid of seeing." But Maya felt a strange pull, a flicker of recognition she couldn't place. She grabbed her sketchbook, the one filled with drawings of wading birds and sleeping alligators, and began to sketch the shadow, trying to give it form, to understand it. The next day, a palpable tension hung in the humid Florida air. Parents kept their children away from the playground. Whispers followed dog walkers near the edge of the woods. Mark Davis was no longer just a commenter on a screen. He was a man on a mission. He printed flyers with the blurry image blown up, the caption now a stark warning. "Is your family safe?" He went door to door, his voice earnest and urgent, collecting signatures for a petition. He demanded that the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, the FWC, take immediate action. "They need to set traps," he told a neighbor, his hands chopping the air. "They need to relocate it. This is a residential area, not some nature documentary. Our kids' safety has to come first." Many agreed. The fear was contagious. The petition filled with names. Leo Martinez scoffed as he watched Mark from his bedroom window. At 13, Leo trusted data, not feelings. "Look at them," he said to Maya over a video call, pointing his phone out the window. "Running around like headless chickens because of a fuzzy picture. It's probably just a big dog." Maya held up her sketchbook to her laptop camera. She'd drawn the shadow from a dozen different angles. "It moves like a cat, Leo," she said quietly. "Look at the shoulder height, the length of the tail." Leo squinted at her drawing. He was the tech guy. She was the nature expert. He respected her observations. "Okay, fine," he conceded. So it's a big cat. My point still stands. We have no real data. The adults are panicking over nothing but a ghost. A new post appeared in the community group. Someone's garbage can had been knocked over, its contents strewn across their driveway. A large paw print was found in the soft dirt next to a rose bush. The print was deep, with no claw marks. The sign of a canine. "Coyote," Sarah Vance said firmly when she saw the photo. But it was too late. In the echo chamber of the group, the paw print was immediately linked to the shadow. The fear intensified. Mark Davis declared it was the Panther becoming bolder. His petition gained more signatures. He started talking about forming a neighborhood watch. That was the breaking point for Leo. "This is ridiculous," he said, meeting Maya by the now deserted playground. "They're going to get some poor animal trapped or killed because they're scared of a picture. We need proof, real proof." Maya nodded, her gaze fixed on the dense wall of cypress trees that bordered the park. "We need to see what it's really doing." Leo's eyes lit up, the way they always did when a plan involving technology began to form. "Exactly. And I know how we do it." He pulled out his phone and showed her a web page for a high-definition night vision trail camera. It has a motion sensor and an infrared flash that animals can't see. We pool our allowances, we buy it, and we set it up. We get our own evidence. The plan felt dangerous, exciting, and necessary. It was their own mission, a secret rebellion against the wave of adult fear. They ordered the camera with one-day shipping. The next evening, just as the sun began to bleed orange and purple across the Florida sky, they met at the edge of the woods. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Cicadas buzzed in a rising crescendo. Leo handled the tech, strapping the small camouflaged box to the trunk of a tall cypress tree that had a perfect, unobstructed view of the entire playground. Maya, who knew the woods better, chose the spot. She pointed out the faint game trail that led from the deeper preserve towards the park. "It would come from here," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the evening chorus. They worked quickly, their hands fumbling slightly with a mix of adrenaline and nerves. They double-checked the angle, armed the motion sensor, and then retreated, melting back into the suburban twilight just as the first streetlights flickered on. The night felt impossibly long. Maya couldn't sleep. She kept looking out her window at the empty, silent playground, now a stage for a drama only she and Leo knew was unfolding. Leo stayed up late, refreshing the live feed of the neighborhood chat, watching the arguments and accusations fly. Mark Davis had posted an update. "Over 100 signatures. The FWC has been formally notified. They have to listen to us." A wave of anxiety hit Maya. What if they were too late? What if, by the time they got their proof, the decision had already been made? The next morning, before the sun had even fully risen, they met again at the cypress tree. The air was cool and heavy with dew. Leo carefully unstrapped the camera, his movements precise. "Don't drop the SD card," he muttered to himself. They didn't speak as they raced back to his house, slipping in through the back door to his room, which was filled with computers and disassembled electronics. He slid the card into his laptop. "Okay," he breathed. "Let's see what we've got." The first few video files were uneventful. A flag on the file showed a timestamp of 9:47 p.m., an armadillo snuffling through the sand, another at 11:12 p.m. A raccoon, its eyes glowing like marbles, trying to pry open a trash bin. Then, an hour of nothing. Leo scrubbed through the empty footage, his face tight with disappointment. "Maybe it didn't come last night," he said, his voice sinking. "Maybe it was all just a..." He stopped, A new file was time-stamped 2:13 a.m. It was long, over a minute. "Here we go," he whispered. He double-clicked. The video flickered to life. For a second, there was only the empty playground, washed in the ghostly black and white of the infrared. Then, from the right side of the frame, something moved. It was silent. It was fluid. It wasn't a blur. It wasn't a shadow. It was a Florida panther. Large, muscular, and terrifyingly real. It stepped out of the woods and stood at the edge of the playground, its head raised, its gaze fixed directly on the swings. The laptop screen glowed in the dark room. Maya's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Leo leaned in so close, his glasses nearly touched the display. It was perfect. The image was sharp, detailed, undeniable. The panther was magnificent. Its muscles shifted under its tan coat as it took another silent step, its long tail twitching almost imperceptibly. It walked the perimeter of the playground, moving with a liquid grace that defied its size and power. It paused at the base of the yellow plastic slide, sniffed the air, and then sat on its haunches. Like a king surveying his domain, it simply watched the empty space. Then, as silently as it appeared, it turned and dissolved back into the impenetrable black of the cypress grove. Leo let out a breath that he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Whoa," he whispered, a huge grin spreading across his face. "We got it. We actually got it." He looked at Maya, expecting her to share his triumph. But her expression was one of pure awe. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice soft. Leo's grin faltered as the practical reality of the situation crashed back in. He replayed the clip. "Okay, this is amazing footage," he said, thinking out loud. "But it doesn't help our case. It does the opposite. This just proves Mark Davis is right. A panther is hanging out at the playground. If he sees this, he won't get calmer. He'll get 100 more signatures." Maya looked from the screen to the dark window. Leo was right. Their proof was also Mark's proof. It proved the animal was there. But it didn't explain why. "We have to leave it," Maya decided, her voice gaining a new resolve. "One night isn't enough. We need more." The next 24 hours were a fresh hell of suspense. Mark Davis had proudly announced on the community page that an FWC officer had called him back, promising to assess the situation. The language was vague, but to Mark and his growing faction, it was a victory. Traps felt imminent. The kids felt like they were in a race against time, their only player a wild animal that followed no script. The following morning, they retrieved the camera again. This time, the SD card was full of new files, dozens of small clips triggered throughout the night. "Okay, let's see what happened in Whispering Pines last night," Leo said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He clicked on a file from 1:15 a.m. The video showed two animals slinking out from the trees. They were lean and mangy, with pointed snouts and nervous, twitchy movements. Coyotes. A known nuisance in the neighborhood, infamous for snatching small pets left unattended. They trotted boldly towards the sandbox, their eyes glowing in the infrared light. Suddenly, a third, larger shape materialized from the shadows near the swing set. It was the panther. She didn't make a sound. She simply lowered her body, her shoulders bunching, and began a slow, deliberate stalk. It was a terrifying display of silent intent. The lead coyote saw her first. It froze, its hackles rising, and let out a sharp yip. Then both coyotes spun around and bolted, vanishing into the preserve as if they were ghosts. The panther watched them go, then calmly resumed her patrol. "No way," Leo breathed. Maya was speechless. They clicked on the next major file, timed at 3:42 a.m. This time, it was a large, muscular dog, a stray pit bull mix that had been seen roaming the neighborhood for weeks, known for its aggressive barking. It trotted onto the playground, sniffing around the base of the merry-go-round. Again, the Panther appeared, this time stepping directly into the center of the frame. The camera's small microphone picked up the sound. It wasn't a roar. It was a deep, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the laptop itself. The stray dog yelped, its bravado instantly gone. It tucked its tail between its legs and scrambled away, its paws slipping in the sand as it fled. "Leo," Maya said, her mind reeling. "It's not hunting here, it's protecting it. She's driving away the real threats." Leo was frantically re-watching the footage, pausing and playing, his analytical mind trying to process what he was seeing. "This is our proof," he said, his voice electric with excitement. "This changes everything. I need a clear still image to show your mom, something to prove it's the same animal in both clips." He froze a frame from the coyote encounter where the Panther had turned its head towards the camera. The quality was incredible. You could almost count the whiskers. He zoomed in, cleaning up the pixels. "Wait," Maya whispered, leaning closer. Her finger traced a shape on the screen. "Leo, zoom in more, on its left ear." Leo dragged the magnification box over the Panther's head. The image blurred slightly, but the detail was still there. It was unmistakable. A small, jagged notch was torn from the top of its left ear. The sight hit Maya like a physical blow. The computer screen seemed to dissolve, the hum of the laptop replaced by a different sound. The roar of a summer thunderstorm from a year ago. She was 12 again, standing in soaked sneakers as rain lashed down. The air smelled of hot asphalt and ozone. And beneath the rumble of thunder, there was another sound, a frantic, high-pitched mewing coming from the dark mouth of a storm drain at the edge of the very same playground. She remembered Leo, right beside her, his face grim with determination. She remembered calling her mom, Sarah, who guided them over the phone. "Use the pool skimmer. Gently. You don't want to scare it?" She remembered them working together, lowering a bucket, coaxing the terrified, soaked ball of fur onto it. It was a tiny panther kitten. As they lifted it out and placed it on a dry towel at the edge of the woods, a flash of lightning had illuminated the tree line. And for a split second, Maya had seen her, a large female panther watching them, her eyes glowing. A jagged tear was clearly visible in her left ear. The memory vanished. Maya was back in Leo's room. She was breathless. "Leo," she said, her voice shaking with the force of the realization. "It's her. It's the mother. The kitten we saved. That's her baby. She remembers. She's not just guarding a territory. She's guarding the place where we helped her." Leo stared, first at Maya's astonished face, then back at the Panther on the screen. His logical brain was firing on all cylinders, connecting the pieces of an impossible puzzle. "This is insane," he said. But then the problem hit him. "And no one will ever believe us. We show Mark Davis this video, and he'll just see a panther chasing a dog. We tell him this story, and he'll say we're just kids with overactive imaginations. He'll say we're making it up to stop the traps." They had the truth, but their truth was unbelievable. They were at a dead end. "My mom," Maya said suddenly, her voice firm with a new idea. "She won't think we're making it up. She was on the phone. She knows." They grabbed the laptop and ran from the room. Sarah Vance was in the living room, reading a book. "Mom," Maya said, her voice trembling slightly with urgency. You need to see this." She turned the laptop around, her heart pounding. Sarah watched the first clip of the panther chasing the coyotes, her eyes widening. She watched the second clip of it growling at the dog. Then, with Leo and Maya talking over each other in a rush of excitement, they explained everything. The rescued kitten, the memory, the identical torn ear. Sarah listened, her expression shifting from shock to awe, and then to deep, serious concentration. She looked at the still image of the panther's ear, then at her daughter's intensely earnest face. She didn't laugh. She didn't dismiss them. Instead, a solemn look came over her face. She reached for her phone on the end table. "You're right," she said, her voice low. "But this is bigger than us now. We can't just post this online. That would cause a riot." Her thumb moved over the screen. "We have to call Dr. Sharma." Leo's face went pale. "Dr. Sharma? From the FWC?" Sarah nodded, already holding the phone to her ear. "Yes," she said, as the phone began to ring. "Immediately." The wait for the FWC biologist to arrive felt longer than any night spent watching the camera. Leo paced his room. Maya doodled nervously in her sketchbook, and Sarah made endless cups of tea they didn't drink. When the unassuming FWC truck finally pulled into the Vance's driveway, a woman stepped out. She was not what they expected. Dr. Anya Sharma was young, with sharp, intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense air. She wore practical hiking boots and a faded FWC polo shirt. She carried no equipment, just a ruggedized tablet. Sarah greeted her at the door, her composure a thin veil over her anxiety. "Dr. Sharma, thank you for coming on such short notice." Dr. Sharma gave a brisk nod. "Your call was unusual," she said, her eyes already scanning, taking in the suburban street, the pristine lawns, and the dark wall of the preserve just beyond. Inside, Leo had the laptop ready. He felt a surge of nervous pride as he queued up the videos. Dr. Sharma stood, arms crossed, watching the screen without expression. She saw the panther's initial appearance. She saw it drive off the coyotes. She saw it confront the stray dog. She didn't speak. Then, Leo brought up the high-resolution still. "Here," he said, pointing. "The left ear." Dr. Sharma leaned in. Her professional mask cracked for just a fraction of a second, replaced by a flicker of intense interest. Maya then told her story. Her voice was quiet but steady as she recounted the storm, the mewing kitten, and the glimpse of the mother with the torn ear watching from the woods. When she finished, the room was silent. Dr. Sharma finally straightened up, tapping a finger on her chin. "Extraordinary," she murmured, almost to herself. She turned to Leo. "Your camera placement and data collection are impressive." Then she looked at Maya. "And your observational memory is remarkable." She wasn't patronizing them. She was speaking to them as peers. "Florida panthers have long memories," she explained, her tone shifting to that of a biologist giving a lecture. "They don't feel gratitude in the human sense, but they absolutely form associations. Your non-threatening rescue a year ago would have registered." She likely associates this specific area, this playground, as a place where humans are not a danger to her young. She's not guarding your children. She's guarding her territory from rival predators. Your playground just happens to be in the middle of it. She pulled out her own tablet. "My team has had cameras deeper in that preserve for months. We've been tracking a female and her subadult cub, a female with a notched left ear." She swiped the screen and showed them a grainy photo of two panthers, one large, one slightly smaller, moving through the undergrowth. The puzzle was complete. The evidence was irrefutable. But then, a grim look crossed her face. The problem, she said, looking at Sarah, is that the community meeting is tonight, and Mr. Davis has already whipped this neighborhood into a frenzy. A PowerPoint presentation with scientific facts won't stop a mob that's running on fear. The community center buzzed with anxious energy. The air was stuffy, smelling of cheap coffee and disinfectant. Every cheap metal folding chair was taken. Mark Davis stood at the front, looking confident and righteous. He saw Dr. Sharma walk in and gave her a welcoming nod, assuming she was his cavalry. He took the podium to a smattering of applause. His speech was powerful. He spoke of sleepless nights, of his daughter asking if the monster was going to get them. He painted a picture of a predator growing bolder, of garbage cans and paw prints, of a ticking clock before tragedy struck. "This isn't about hating an animal," he declared, his voice ringing with passion. "This is about loving our children. We have a right to feel safe in our own homes, on our own streets, on our own playground." He had the room in the palm of his hand. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. The case seemed closed. Then, Sarah Vance stood up. "My children have something they'd like to show you," she said, her voice clear and steady in the tense room. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the crowd. Mark Davis looked annoyed by the interruption. Leo, his hands shaking slightly, connected his laptop to the projector. The lights dimmed. The first video played on the large screen. The crowd gasped as the Panther drove off the coyotes. A bewildered silence fell. The second video played, showing the confrontation with the aggressive stray. The silence deepened. Then, Maya stepped forward. She didn't have Mark's booming voice, but she had a truth that was even more powerful. She told the story of the kitten, her voice clear and unwavering. And as she spoke, Leo projected the high-resolution photo of the Panther's face onto the screen, the torn ears circled in red. "She isn't here to hunt," Maya concluded, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces. "She's here because this is the place she knows is safe." The room erupted into a chaos of questions and arguments. Mark Davis looked utterly bewildered, his narrative shattered. Before he could respond, Dr. Sharma took the podium. In crisp, scientific terms, she confirmed everything. She explained the concept of a keystone species. She reframed the Panther not as an intruder, but as a vital, self-regulating security system for the preserve, one that was inadvertently keeping nuisance animals away from their neighborhood. "Mr. Davis is right about one thing," Dr. Sharma said, her voice commanding the room. "This is about your children's safety. And the data shows that this Panther's presence makes the edge of this preserve objectively safer from the animals that are a genuine risk to pets and small children." She then proposed a solution. Not traps and relocation, but education. A Living with Wildlife initiative. She laid out simple, practical steps the community could take to coexist. The evidence was overwhelming. The logic was undeniable. The fear in the room began to recede, replaced by a new, unfamiliar feeling. Awe. Mark Davis stood motionless, his face a complex mask of shock and dawning understanding. He looked at the photo of the Panther on the screen, then at his own 2 children in the front row, who were looking at Maya with wide, admiring eyes. The fight went out of him. He walked slowly back to the podium, picked up the microphone, and cleared his throat. I withdraw the petition," he said, his voice quiet but clear. It seems we had the wrong monster." The following months transformed Whispering Pines. Motion sensor lights were installed, garbage cans were secured. The FWC's educational brochures, featuring one of Maya's beautiful charcoal sketches of the Panther, were on every refrigerator. The playground was unofficially then officially renamed Panther Park. The fear was gone, replaced by a fierce local pride. The shadow was no longer a threat. It was their guardian. One evening in the late fall, Maya sat on her porch swing, sketching the sunset. The air was cool and crisp. The sounds of the neighborhood were winding down. She glanced toward the empty playground, a familiar habit. And for just a moment, at the dark edge where the manicured grass met the wild preserve, she saw them. Two pairs of luminous green eyes, one higher, one slightly lower. They watched her for a long, silent moment. Then, with a flick of an unseen tail, they turned and vanished back into the cypress shadows, the silent protectors returning to the night. If you were a resident of Whispering Pines, would you have supported Mark's petition to remove the panther? Or would you have trusted in a plan for coexistence from the start?